Well, thank you, Tanvir, for this invitation, and I'm happy to be part of this program. I haven't been formally associated with Professor Oommen, nor I have at any point of time one-to-one interactions with him. Much of the time that I have interacted with him during the conference or workshops whenever he delivered the lecture. And therefore, I didn't have that kind of privilege of knowing him. But I was acquainted with his name when I was doing my postgraduate at Pune University. We had a paper. If you really look at the Pune University syllabus, in those days it was very Americanized. There was very little of India except I remember Hindu social institutions and what is called the rural, urban and tribal social structure. And it was in the rural tribal structure that we found that those days this whole debate or rural-urban continuum. And in that reading, in that subject or topic, there was a reading of Professor T.K. Oommen, which was basically a critique of rural-urban continuum. And he's trying to say as to how this whole continuum, in fact, in the context of India, is a problematic. But most importantly, he brings out something very important, that when you're trying to understand this whole social transformation, the core of each society core institutional feature of each society is almost obscured. And I think it's very important if you really want to understand the transition from rural to urban. I think that was, I thought, was one of them. And I think we were all fascinated with this. And I think friends of us had Cyclist styled it, and we had really kept that article. So then I came to know him when I began my PhD at IIT Kanpur, Professor Dhanagre, and I was working on the agrarian social structure. And that is when again I got associated with the writings of Professor T.K. Oommen, particularly what's called Udaan movement, then his mobilizations, institutionalizations, and so on and so forth. And I found that, again, he was very interested in the sense that on those days, 70s, there's a whole big debate between mode of productions and the middle peasant thesis. And he realized that T.K. Oommen, in fact, again, tried to engage with the whole idea of the middle peasant thesis that was there. And unlike others who were primarily talking in terms of class, he introduced the concept of what you call the caste, class, and state. That, again, you find is a very interesting idea in terms of which you are looking at the middle class. So you can't really talk of middle class as such, but you have to really introduce the caste dimensions and also the political ideology that was. So that, I think, is interesting. I was not aware of it that he was a product of Pune University, of which I was as well. And it's only much later that I came to know of him. But in the course of my interactions, though, as I said, not personal, but I think through writing of his works, I learned a great deal, both in the context of when I was doing the agrarian studies during my PhD, and later on when I began to move to the studies of tribal questions in India. And what really I found interesting about him is that many of these concepts and categories that we generally use from the West, he was very critical, and you're trying to see as to what extent those categories are actually can be thought about in the context of the South Asian reality. So that has been there, and therefore what I would like to say is that although not a formal student, not a formal interactions or colleagues, I have, if there's anyone other than other person who really passed away very recently, I think the two people who have influenced me greatly is Andravati and T.K. Oommen. The canvas of their writings and canvas of the way in which they think and the way they have reflected, it has immensely influenced my life, my academic journey. And I owe a great deal surely to Professor Andravati and T.K. Oommen. And I feel that something even more fascinating about T.K. Oommen is that someone who who acknowledge the people who really come from the margins of the society. And I was quite surprised when there was this seminar as a part of the, I was called International Book Fair in Germany. And he was, what's called, worked out a team of those who would be along with him, 4 Germans and 4 Indians. It was, I think, Vipin Chandra was the chairman of the National Book Trust, and I think that was organized. And I was a part of it, and that book, that's the first time I really spent a more durable time with taking Oommen, and that book really came on the classes, citizenship and inequality. So I think what I find, what I would like to say is that his academic engagement, but more so even his personality, the way in which try to influence, persuade the young people, understand them, and looking at the whole society from the lens of the marginality. That I thought was one of the most amazing things that I've really learned from him. And I think most of the young students have been tremendously influenced because of the kind of lens, that perspective that he had. So this is what I have to say, and I would like to pay my debt to him, because I think he has also influenced me greatly, although it is not consciously but unconsciously, in terms of the way in which I have borrowed many of his ideas and tried to work on that. Thank you very much.